such an honor to be here. Well, the lights are really bright, I can't see you all. Yeah, lovely to be here. As Jan already introduced me, I actually came here to speak at a Women in Tech conference happening on Saturday, which was amazing and lovely. I see some people who attended are back for more Mars-related topics. Not going to be a surprise for you, it's a very similar presentation. The caveat here is we're actually invited one of the NASA scientists we're working with, the director of Mars Institute, Dr. Lee. He is on VC, on Hangouts, and unfortunately we can't see him, and he can't see us, technology. But he is hanging around until 10 Pacific Standard Time, which is like at the close of the hour, so 7. I'll try to go through my slides really fast, because I want you guys to have a chance to ask any Mars or Devon Island specific questions and address them directly to Dr. Lee. Once he hangs up, a busy man to carve out an hour of his day, you're more than I'll stay here for Q&A, and you're more than welcome to ask any questions. We had a sort of a fireside chat conversation yesterday at the Tech Hub in Prague, which was sort of my preferred format. I love talking about this. I'm very passionate about the topic. So if you have any advice or outside of questions, I'm very open to engage in a conversation rather than just present. I think at this point, I'm a pro at how this works. So all of the imagery that I used outside of what you'll see as Berkeley on a few slides, the city of Berkeley in California, are actually taken from the NASA website, and they were taken by a reconnaissance orbiter of Mars. And it's really cool. Enjoy it. Yeah, so I'll start by telling you a little bit about what we're going to cover in the next 30 minutes. I hope to go over it a little faster. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'll tell you about Mars on Earth, as it's been referred to by many, also known as Devon Island. I'll tell you how I got to be so lucky and honored, to be honest. I'll tell you what's in the scope of the project that I'm working on, and why I'm presenting here, or why am I at this Women in Tech conference here at the Planetarium and the Technology Hub in Prague. So yeah, this is the image of Berkeley, the lovely California, the Golden Gate Bridge. I hope it's high resolution enough. So I was born in the 80s. I was born in Russia actually, but we followed my dad for his military career. He was in the Soviet army, and ended up in Belarus right before the Soviet Union collapsed. So this is my mom. It's cute. It was just black and white. I'm sure you guys are familiar with this. And in 2000, I moved to Germany. Hard to see. Oh yeah, I have it here. So yeah, moved to Germany, Frankfurt to be exact. What I missed the opportunity to tell you that while growing up in Russia, I actually got to benefit from really excellent education. Yeah, it was never really perfect during the socialist times, but you did get to benefit from free piano classes and dance classes, and you were sort of exposed to a lot of theatre and literature. I really do appreciate that part of it. So moved to Germany after realizing that the opportunity didn't really lie in Russia, which I thought was a good move for me, because I really followed my aspirations to become a musical performer. So I studied to sing, dance, and act, and I pursued that for a few years. No, that's not a picture of me, but it is of the students of the academy that I attended most recently, actually. So then in 2006, I moved to the US. I keep forgetting, to California. That's the only state I've lived in thus far, and I love it. It's an amazing country and a really fantastic state. I attended Berkeley. I majored in political science, and I was challenged. It was really interesting. I was fascinated by what I was studying. I studied authoritarian regimes and wrote my own thesis on elections in authoritarian regimes. Shouldn't surprise you. Growing up in Belarus, it's sort of a natural choice for me. Also, it seemed, yeah, anytime if you're a Cal alumni or a Berkeley alumni, when you graduate, you were told that you have to call out Berkeley anywhere you go or present, so go Bears. Yeah, and it's funny, I was telling the story yesterday. I was in one of the parks in Prague and we were walking around and I saw somebody wearing a Berkeley t-shirt and like an insane woman, I ran up smiling going, "Go Bears!" And I got no reaction at all. It's like, I guess he didn't get the memo about the shout out, or maybe just borrowed a t-shirt from somebody. So after I graduated, I actually worked for the California government for the judicial branch of it, which was fun. I worked as an analyst and I thoroughly enjoyed it, but living in Silicon Valley, you hear so much about the tech companies, and I think at this point you're more likely to run into somebody who works at Google than not, or somebody who knows somebody who works at Google. So a friend of mine reached out and she said, hi Barbara, she said, do you think you want to try to work for Google? And I thought, well, I'll interview at least if I'm lucky enough to get a job. And I did get a job. And I've been with Google now for 4 years, and I do really enjoy it. I've switched a few teams. I currently work on Google Assistant, and the team I'm a part of, we work on third-party integration. So we bring on the likes of Uber or Spotify, anything that Google does not provide as a service. We build the infrastructure to build the app off, so you can say, okay, Google, call me an Uber. I hope I'm not triggering any phones. Yeah, so, and why I'm here, I love this bit, because I'm going to Mars. Not really, almost. I hope Dr. Lee is listening, because I'm extremely excited. We just talked a few hours ago. I'm extremely excited about what we're doing. So we're actually going to Devon Island, which is in the Canadian Arctic, and it's a polar desert, and it's an island that's covered in permafrost the entire year, but 40 days, and it's devoid of any animal or plant life, and it's not very attractive for a vacation, so to say, but makes the island really interesting for scientists. Because there is no water flow, because it's permafrost, so there's very little weathering of anything that you can find there. We're back to Earth, and to be exact, on Devon Island, we're actually going to Houghton Mars Project Research Station. Just kind of cool. Yes, Dr. Lee, this is your image from your presentation. And so a little perspective for you guys, and you're at a planetarium, so I'm sure you're all familiar with all of it. So as you can see, there is Czech Republic, or Czechia, as I learned, is the new name. Devon Island is at the very, very top right there. And here is Google in Mountain View. Well, we sort of occupy a big area. So you can imagine that it's really, really high up north. It's not going to be as pleasant as it is here in Czech Republic in terms of weather. It's really lovely. It's going to be cold. So Devon Island, just in a nutshell, is the largest uninhabited island on Earth. You sort of read through what you see. It's a home. What's important, I think, and what I'm really curious about, is a home to Houghton crater, which was created 39 million years ago by an impact with a projectile. And what happened, the impact was so violent that it brought up rocks from about 2 kilometers deep from the surface. And as I said, because it's permafrost and there's no flowing water, there is no weathering, and you get to study the rocks that sort of been underground for so long, and they're so well preserved. Great opportunity, and NASA is taking advantage of it. A little bit more about Devon Island is the only impact crater on Earth, and there's an exceptional range of Mars analog. And if you look at what's presented here, you see Mars compared to Devon Island, and you see the crater, the ground ice, the rock glaciers, and this is what, and Dr. Lee will be able to answer your question, but these are sort of, not only do we have the pictures now to compare, but those are also places of significance. If you study something like water is really important, valleys, and if you see like water used to flow through them is really important, all of that formation. And we're going to study it. Yesterday I mentioned it, and I forgot to say it at a Women's in Tech conference. Many people, there's like a controversy where journalists would show pictures of Mars and say, oh, NASA is lying to us, they're really just presenting us with the images taken on Devon Island. So it's not like we said, oh, this is the closest to Mars you get on Earth. Everybody's saying, in fact, we've never gone to Mars. These are the images from Devon Island. It's nice to be a part of it. So, and where we're staying, this is the research station in a sort of star modular formation. As I'm learning, this is the best formation for extreme weather conditions. And not only does it have buildings, but extremely important. Like when you go to Mars, or in this case, Devon Island, you don't just stay in one place. What you want to do is you want to travel out. You can only get on foot so far, so you have ATVs, SUVs, Humvees, and you sort of travel around. I can't wait to see it in person. How did I get to be so lucky as to be honored to join NASA, you'd ask? I think the most frequently asked question I got is, how do I go? People get really excited. And, well, yeah, it sort of answered it all. I'm very curious. I love learning, and it annoys the heck out of my friends because I never just leave something without asking a question. I'm really good at relationship building and maintaining, and you won't believe how far it gets you. I get things done. I think people really appreciate it, especially in a fast-paced environment. I'm a decent problem solver, and I'm really passionate about what I do. And I think at this point, after being at a place where I work for such a long time and I have exposed myself to so many things, I really can concentrate and work on something I really like, which is, I feel really fortunate about it. And so, how did I get to be so lucky? So, first of all, outside of, I'll go back, this is actually a picture of Google office in Dublin, and they are all this colorful. I just visited this morning, I went to the one in Prague. It's a lot smaller, but it's still really lovely. Outside of having fantastic free food and so many different cafes, Google provides you with an amazing network of people, so they do a really good job hiring amazing individuals. I don't think there is a person who doesn't have a fantastic story. And you come back to work on Monday and you ask people what they did over the weekend, and it's mind-blowing. People volunteer, people sail the world, it's phenomenal. So outside of that, if you hire people like that, you sort of want to keep them interested in things that they do outside of work as well. And Google offers us something called Google Talks. Their official site is Talks at Google. If you have not seen this, they have their own channel, they have a website, just type in Talks at Google. Almost all of the talks and the speakers that Google invites, they publish and record. And it's people who publish books. Could be a children's book, a scientific book, a beautification book, education book, political aspiration book, you name it. There's a plethora of topics, and writers come and talk about their books. Politicians come and talk about the laws they're about to propose. Who else do we get? Artists, singers, and you sort of just look into the Explore, and if you go to a category, you see, like, I selected NASA, and it just takes me to all kinds of talks. Yeah, like most recent ones. And I know that Google has so many touch points with NASA, and they work on so many cool projects. I wanted my own. So I went to one of the talks, and I was fascinated with what Dr. Lee had to say. He was talking about Mars, and I've always wanted to learn more about planets, about space travel, And this was one of the, and you know, as a child, you're always fascinated. It's not hard to get somebody excited about astronomy, but you don't really go into depth outside of reading the articles and books and watching the movies. So I thought, this is a chance. So I asked Dr. Lee if he would join for lunch, and NASA just happens to be like 5-minute walk from Google main campus. So it was easy. Dr. Lee said, yeah, I'll join. And we sort of started brainstorming what we could do as a project, and that was a while ago. And we've tried a few things. Many things didn't work out, so lesson learned there was don't be afraid of failure. Not everything's going to work. But we continued plowing along, and here we are. So what will we do there on Devon Island? Well, for me, it's going to be a lot of street view imagery. So part of the project is there is no street view of Devon Island. So today, if you went to Google Earth and typed in Devon Island, you wouldn't be able to see anything. So, and this is Google Tracker. They've actually come up with something much smaller now, so I'm not going to have to carry the 30 kilogram tracker. But if you didn't know, this is actually something you can learn from Google. If you go into a remote island somewhere in French Polynesia that you know you can check Google Earth doesn't have a view of, you can request, you fill out a form, it's really easy, and Google will provide you with equipment. They'll lend it to you for 40 days, and they'll publish your imagery literally within 10 days of you returning and providing all the imagery. And the different things, like you can do a GoPro, they can give it to you. And just in case you've never seen what Google Earth team does, like this is just some cool stuff they did under the water. And again, they'll give you the equipment to do it. I mean, you're not going to be compensated for it. It's sort of on a volunteer basis, but your pictures are going to be out there. And it's at times when I sit at home and I'm procrastinating, I'll just go look at these pictures. They're just so fantastic. And it's 360, so you can turn around and see it all. And if you have a cool VR set or just a VR set, it's even cooler. Not all of it is in VR capable. Yeah, those are just a few, and they're fantastic. So then we thought, well, what else can we do outside of collecting imagery? So the Earth team connected me to the Voyager team. And the Voyager, honestly, I have to be completely honest, I didn't know they existed. And I work at Google. What they do is they sort of elegantly wrap the story around the imagery. They take the 360 from Earth and they sort of zoom in on the globe and create a story. So there is text, there is a picture, you can see where it is in relation to other countries or places in the world, and you actually get to learn something. Sometimes there is a video link to it, sometimes there's a sound bite of, like, they did this thing on the whales, and you can hear, if you go to Google Voyager and you type in whales, it actually has a sound bite of the noises of different whales. It's just phenomenal. And what we're going to do, and there are just a few things that Google Voyager team already worked on with NASA, are just spectacular. Like these waterways. One of my favorites is their recent story on crab migration, red crab migration on Christmas Island. They actually went and filmed, like you can see the crabs and you get the idea, right? There's a text to the right, sometimes right there where there's a little plain envelope plate, you can actually click and see the videos or listen to the sound bites. Fascinating. And just a few other things they did, like just the imagery is phenomenal. Granted, this imagery was provided to us by NASA, and part of the thing, we haven't developed it fully, we're sort of just going to grab all the images we can, but we wanted to take the images from Devon Island, collect the images from NASA, from satellite, the most updated imagery of Mars, and say, all right, this is the crater on Devon Island, and this is the crater on Mars. Dr. Lee, with his colleagues, kindly agreed to provide us with the commentary, or at least sign off on it, so that we don't just tell you stories we want to tell you, but it's actually factually correct. So as if that wasn't enough, I was so excited about the Voyager. I thought, oh, we're going to package it so well. The Voyager team then connected us to the education team, and they hire a teaching resource, so a teacher who tries to tie in the Voyager stories into the curricula of the teachers. So what we're going to do is, in collaboration with NASA, we're going to write the content that the teachers can then use to, when they teach astronomy, especially Mars-related things, to kids. So the experience of the classroom becomes more interactive. And I know that many teachers try to bring kids to places like here, where we are today, or show some videos. This is sort of going to be a part of what they teach kids, that there are places on Earth, and you can learn about it without really having to leave the classroom. And yeah, we were really excited about that. And then another team introduced us to another team, and another team. The things work very, very smoothly, we go that way. And they said, well, why don't we bring a production team and make a movie about it? Because it'd be really cool to film a documentary, not just about how wonderful this place is, Devon Island, but what fantastic work NASA scientists do there, and sort of use it as educational material as well. No, there's going to be no Matt Damon, but we will be filming the real people, the real stars, highlighting the great work that they do. And yeah, Dr. Lee promised we're going to suit up. So I can't believe I'm the lucky one to wear an astronaut suit and hop on an ATV and ride around Devon Island. I really hope to bring back a picture like this. I really do. Why am I speaking here? And this is personal. So I first agreed to talk Women in Tech because I am a woman and I am in technology. So I was like, well, I do fit in. And then I've been invited before to conferences that sort of focused more on disadvantages that women face when working in tech companies. And I said yes to one and no to another because I couldn't really relate. So when I was growing up, we had to deal with so much. We had to deal with poverty, corruption, like transition from Soviet Union to the new world. I had to think about how am I going to immigrate, where am I going to go, getting papers. Coming from Belarus is not easy. What am I going to do? I can't even go to the university in Belarus. So identifying as a woman who potentially will have to face the glass ceiling wasn't something I even thought about. That is not to say that there isn't glass ceiling. I'm not denying that, and I'm not denying the struggle that many women go through. But I just couldn't relate in that sense. And I really liked that this whole trip was about sort of women empowerment and sort of just go and make your own opportunity. And I really stand by it, and I really believe in it. And I think my main takeaway from all of this was, well, I'm not an engineer. I work as a program manager at Google. And I'm able to create something an opportunity for myself that I'm so passionate about, and I can really live a dream, so to say. So can you. So my sort of main goal is to, even if one person walks away from here and says, well, she did it from nowhere really, I can. Like, go talk to, skip your manager level, go talk to your director. If you're really passionate about something, people catch on to that, people like it, so they do want to help you if they see that you're doing something good, something interesting. People want to be a part of something cool. And why wait until you get asked to be a part of something cool? Just be it. So even if one person walks out of here today and says, oh, I'm going to do something cool, even if you write an email to Dr. Lee and says, hey, I want to do an internship with you guys, I'll be really proud of you, whoever it is. So one person for me. And then last words for me was, so while Elon Musk is building his rocket and is going to think about who he's going to send to Mars first in 2025, just to yourself, just be inspiring, be curious is my advice. As I said, try to create your own opportunities. You can't wait until somebody gives it out to you. Go and do it. And love what you do, because I do. And I said it in the other talk as well. They say if you do something you love, you'll never feel like you work a day, or you'll never work a day in your life. Not true. It's really hard work. It's honestly like not a day, but like every week I get to a point where I think, oh, can I still handle it? Like, and then you pick yourself up and you do it, and it's worth it, but it's not easy. But fight for what you want, and that's it for me. And I think I'll open it up to questions. Do we have Dr. Lee on the line?
We do. We will see him. We will hear him. He will hear us, but he will not see us.
I'm so sorry, Dr. Lee. Looking forward to seeing you on this massive dome screen, which is just absolutely stunning. And hey, while we're waiting, thank you so much, everybody, for joining. Hey!
Yeah, just a sec.
We can see you so well.
Do you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you too.
That was a good talk, Katja. Very good.
Hey, thanks so much. Thanks. So do you guys have any questions to Dr. Lee?
Right, so I've got a microphone here, so if any one of you has a question to Dr. Lee, that would be awesome. But first, may I have a question, Dr. Lee?
Well, since you got the mic, Jan, I
cool.
think.
So, hello, maybe at the very beginning, to know what we are supposed to ask about, could you do a brief introduction and let us know what the scope of questions can be asked?
Oh, I'm very happy to just support Katja's talk today. I'm a planetary scientist, so my specialty is the exploration of planets, mostly in our solar system, and in particular Mars. But feel free to ask other questions. I work at two non-profit organizations. One is the Mars Institute, and the other is the SETI Institute. So that stands for Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence Institute. So you can ask me about SETI as well if you like.
Thanks so much. And this time, I was trying to sort of allot this time for you guys to ask any questions that you might have related to Mars, since I might not be able to answer them, and why Mars is so easily compared to Devon Island. I'm happy to take any questions related to Google or this specific project within Google once Dr. Lee hangs up with us. And we have a question in the back.
Hi, I'm Martin. I would like to ask you, what are some of those interesting books that you have behind yourself on the bookshelf?
Okay. This particular bookcase it's actually all books about the human exploration of Mars. So life is too short. I don't collect, you cannot collect too many books, so I'm very focused on the books that I'm interested in. And so anything that relates to humans going to Mars, I have in my library, actually, I think. But otherwise, there are books on Mars science, on the planet Mars, and also on the search for life in the universe. So to me, those are important books.
All right, thank you. Any more questions?
I have a question, since nobody's asking. You guys think about questions. Sort of selfishly, because we're going soon. How are you preparing, Dr. Lee, to your trip to Devon Island?
Well, this is our 22nd summer field campaign on Devon Island. So the project has been running now for 22 years. In fact, we think that we are the longest NASA-funded research project at the surface of the Earth at this point. But the planning is very important because every year, even though we are repeating our journey to Devon Island, every year is essentially an expedition. And so the secret to be successful in any expedition is planning. In fact, there are 3 secrets, and the 3 secrets are planning, planning, and planning. So the planning means that we are getting ready for all the research experiments that we plan to have, that we will also be ready for all the safety that we have to have in place for our campaign. You mentioned earlier that Devon Island is the largest uninhabited island on Earth, so that's correct. And the implication about that is that there's no help if you need help immediately available if you run into trouble. So we have to be prepared ourselves to to take care of ourselves at least until remote help can make its way there if that was really necessary. This year we are planning an interesting field campaign. We will have 2 parts to the field campaign. We'll be on Devon Island for a total of about 3 weeks. And the first part will be based at our base camp, which Katja showed you. And we will operate out of our base camp like you would explore Mars or the Moon from a base. But then for the second part of our field campaign, we will be going on a road trip. So the team at the camp will be reduced, and we will head out on a rover journey across Devon Island. So the camp will be closed at that point, and we will be sort of in an exploration mode on a road trip. So this is interesting because even before we do this on Mars, we will probably be doing this on the Moon, and having a small group of astronauts or explorers travel across the surface of the Moon or Mars over distances of several hundred kilometers is going to be something very important to do for science and to really learn about the Moon thoroughly. So our research this year will start building time, if you will, and experience on how to plan these road trips on the Moon and Mars in the future, how to optimize their science return, their safety. So even though it's not a full-up simulation, we will be sort of constraining our road trip with specific sort of rules that would apply on a real mission on Mars or the Moon, for example. So the easiest example is the maximum speed limit. We're not going to be driving faster than 25 kilometers per hour on this landscape. Also, we will have limited time. When Katja puts on a spacesuit and goes out for her field work, we will have limited time for her to sort of stay in the suit because it's supposed to have limited oxygen, of course. So these are partial constraints that we operate under to create some realistic conditions for our field research.
Thank you so much. Very good answer. There is a question actually in the audience, so I'll pass it on to them. Thank you, Pascal.
Hello, my name is Marek. I would like to ask 2 questions actually. The first one is, how much of life is there on Devon Islands? And the second one, what are the most surprising similarities between Devon Islands and Mars?
Yeah. So as far as the wildlife is concerned, there is life on Devon Island, just not a lot. There are mammals, of course. There's the polar bear. There's Arctic wolf. In 22 years up on Devon Island, I've seen an Arctic wolf once, just 2 years ago, and we've seen polar bear. We see polar bears about once a year. With global warming, there's more and more polar bears on Devon Island. Most of the time, polar bears are at sea. But now that there's less frozen sea ice for the polar bears to roam around, sometimes they spend more time on islands in the summer. And so we see polar bears. There's also musk oxen, caribou, very few though. We're talking about 1 or 2, maybe 3 individuals. Sometimes it's a little family at a time. So Devon Island is what you call a polar desert. It's not only cold but dry. And on Earth, there's very little polar desert. Most of Alaska, all of Alaska, all of Siberia is not polar desert. It's tundra, and so tundra and of course taiga where there's trees, but it's tundra otherwise, meaning that it's cold, but it's also very wet. There's grass growing everywhere in tundra. In polar desert, it's cold and dry, so there's no more, at least not any significant visible vegetation left. But still there are plants. There are Arctic poppies, Arctic willow, There are little meadows here and there that are places where there's more moisture. Interestingly, inside the crater that Katja was talking to you about, inside the crater, because it's collecting water, because of the topographic depression, there's more moisture, there's therefore actually more biology inside the crater. So it's sort of an interesting contrast. Sometimes people think that impact craters are bad news for life, but in a polar desert environment, if it can collect water, it actually creates a little oasis for life in this type of setting. So there's a little bit of plant life, and of course there's microbes. Microbes is, of course, the form of life that we're interested in. There are microbes living inside rocks, underneath the ground, in the ice as well. And so these are all forms of microbes that are adapted to the extreme environment of the Arctic, and that's actually very interesting to study that kind of life at the site. Your other question was, sorry?
About the surprising
similarities between
similarities.
and Island.
Oh, there's a lot of similarities in the sense that Mars itself is a polar desert. If you have to characterize the climate on Mars, comparing it to the Earth, you would call it a polar desert. It's cold and dry. Of course, it's much colder on Mars, drier as well. But Devon Island and places like that take you one step in the right direction. So the similarities, well, the crater and how it's weathering over time, the fact that the crater once had a lake, the lake is now gone, but there are lake beds that are preserved and that are similar in some sense to some of the ancient lake beds that we think are preserved on Mars. There are also outside the crater canyons, valley networks, gullies, these specific features called RSL on Mars, recurring slope lineae, which are temporary flows of either dust or water, we think. Even those have equivalents on Devon Island. So it's a place that's remarkable because it has such a wide variety of environmental similarities with Mars, even though it is less extreme. And so one of the lessons we have learned about Mars from studying this place is that you often hear that Mars was much warmer in its past and more like the Earth, but we don't think that is true. For everything that we have learned about Mars from Devon Island so far tells us that it's the opposite. And the basic reason is that most of the features, the geology that on Mars has been attributed to a warm climate, actually does not require a warm climate. We see similar things on Devon Island, and they are formed under very cold conditions, often by ice. And so this is actually a simpler explanation for everything we see on Mars. And so, not surprisingly, you're hearing more and more publications now that are explaining how Mars was actually always cold in its history, in its early past. So even though the popular culture is still led to believe that Mars was once wet and warm and sort of Earth-like, there was actually a lot of wishful thinking in that. And based on our fieldwork on Devon Island in particular, we think that it was always cold. The climate was always cold. There was liquid water, nevertheless, of course, at the surface of Mars, more in the past than today. That was because the ground was warm, not the atmosphere, not the climate.
Okay, thank you. I'll ask the following question. My name is Dominika. You mentioned that you're doing this for quite a time right now, and I want to know more about lessons learned, because you're still on Earth. And what about the disaster management? Would there be any casualties if there were no oxygen? I'd like to hear about this more from you. What are like the takeaways from the experience?
Yeah, sure. So the reason why we go to the Arctic, I mean, I go there for science, and so I just gave you some lessons learned from the standpoint of the geology of Mars and the history of Mars climate. But when it comes to human exploration planning, it's very good to have a place like Devon Island because you can practice different scenarios of exploration, and of course it's very forgiving. If you make a mistake, if you realize that something that killed you on Mars, well, you can decide. So let me give you a few examples. First of all, you should understand that on Mars, if you are not careful and just walk outside the way you are dressed right now, there are sort of 5 things that will kill you. And in chronological order of cause of death is number 1 is the low atmospheric pressure. So the atmospheric pressure on Mars is very low. If you just walk outside, the gas that is in your blood right now, the oxygen and the nitrogen would bubble up, and you would essentially fizz or die of depressurization within seconds. If that did not kill you, the second thing that will kill you is the atmosphere. The atmosphere is not breathable. It's made of carbon dioxide. We need oxygen, molecular oxygen. And so the carbon dioxide would be a poisonous gas for you to breathe, and so you would die within minutes. The third thing that will kill you is the low temperature. The temperature on Mars is on average minus 60 degrees Celsius. So if you were not protected, you would freeze. Your entire body would become essentially a stick of ice within a few hours. If that did not kill you, well then the dust. The dust is toxic on Mars. We know now that the dust contains peroxides and perchlorates. They're both heavily oxidizing compounds, very aggressive chemically. And also the particles of the dust are very small, and also they're very abrasive. And so if you breathe in dust into your lungs, it will irritate your lungs, it will attack the thyroid, and the dust itself would also clog the pores of your lungs. You would have breathing difficulty. And so this will kill you actually in a matter of weeks, I think. And then finally, the radiation at the surface of Mars. Even though you are somewhat protected by being at the surface of Mars, the atmosphere is very thin, and there's no magnetic field on Mars. And so the 2 things that are protecting us here on Earth from space radiation, and I'm talking about galactic cosmic rays and solar protons, those 2 things you're not protected from them really at the surface of Mars. So radiation will kill you over the course of years if you are exposed to the Martian radiation environment, months to years. So anyway, back to your point, we're practicing procedures that allow us to explore Mars, of course in spacesuits, but we face specific challenges. So for example, the spacesuit right now is too heavy for us to take to Mars. The spacesuit that we have, including the one that was used on the moon on Apollo, weighs on Earth 300 pounds. So that's approximately 150 kilos. Okay. If you take the spacesuit to the moon, where gravity is 6 times less, well then the felt weight, the weight that you feel that your spacesuit has, is 300 pounds divided by 6. That's 50 pounds, in other words, roughly 25 kilos. So 25 kilos, it's like a heavy backpack. You can carry 25 kilos and explore. And so sure enough, the Apollo astronauts were able to explore, wearing even the heavy spacesuit that we have. But if you take that same spacesuit to Mars, gravity on Mars is 38% of what it is on the Earth. So a 300-pound spacesuit would weigh 125 pounds on Mars, which is approximately 70 kilos, 65 kilos. That is way too heavy for us to wear and be productive explorers. And so we face a big challenge. We have to reduce the mass of the spacesuit in half. So you were asking, what have we learned? Well, one of the things we've done on Devon Island is a solution to cutting the mass of the spacesuit system to enable astronauts to be effective explorers. And the solution is to actually add an ATV, a vehicle, to the explorer at all times. So instead of being mostly on foot, you will actually be mostly driving your own personal little motorcycle, if you will, but it's not 2 wheels, it's a 4-wheel motorcycle. And the advantage of that is that you can carry on the motorcycle most of your oxygen, most of the batteries that you need for your spacesuit. So now your spacesuit does not need a big backpack, it just needs a very small one. And that's one important way in which you can cut the mass of your spacesuit dramatically. And of course, you have to be close to the oxygen and the battery supply of your AT, of your rover. But that's easy to do because the rover will be smart and it will follow you like a Google self-driving car. Okay, so that's one of the reasons why I'm interested in working with Google is because we're looking at new technologies for the future of vehicles and space systems to enable more effective exploration. So again, this is just one example of a technical solution that was found on Devon Island to resolve, to enable Mars exploration.
Wow, that sounds like a material for a book. Is there one? I would like to read about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm actually working on a book.
Very good.
It's called From Earth to Mars.
That sounds good. So I have one more follow-up question, I promise. So we could talk about past. How about future? How long would that island be able to serve as a playground for your team? And like for how many years would you be able to go on the missions or expeditions, considering the climate change?
Well, climate change is definitely an issue, especially in the Arctic. The Arctic is very sensitive to climate change. We are already seeing some of the effects of climate change. Some summers are rotten, so to speak. In other words, even though most of the summers are cold and dry, some summers we actually have a lot of rain. And so this year, for example, I hope that when Katja is there and I'm there, we will not have rain, because even though it happens, it's usually rare. At least it was rare in the past, and now it's becoming more and more frequent. So you make a good point. I think to first order, Devon Island will remain a polar desert for several decades to come. It's unlikely to drastically change environmentally, to the point of not allowing it to be a good place for training. It's unlikely to change, within the next several decades. But global warming is definitely an issue that needs to be addressed, so it's a bigger matter, of course. But as far as our planning, our funding is year to year. So, as far as I'm concerned, or as far as NASA's concerned, maybe there will be no next year. So we're lucky that every year so far, regardless of who's in charge of NASA, in fact, regardless of who's in the White House, we have been funded to continue using Devon Island as a training place, as a learning place for Mars. But I fully anticipate that we will start seeing within the next decade active astronauts for the Moon as well as Mars. And also
That's what you get with live TV. Are we able to repair it? Good questions. Very good participative audience.
Right, I'm sorry for the technical difficulties. You got Katja here, so you can ask her. Hopefully she will not disappear.
No, but isn't he fantastic? Just working with him, sometimes I could sit and listen to him for days. So anytime we're on a call or we're discussing the project, it's a treat. Dr. Lee, are we able to get you back? Well, he wouldn't have left without saying goodbye. But he did tell me he has a meeting. He was in the middle of the sentence, so I don't think that's what happened. All right, I'm done. 10 o'clock. It's like, hang up. Yeah. Well, while they're trying to get Dr. Lee back, any thoughts, feedback, advice, questions?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, hi.
Yeah. My name is Moisés.
Lovely to meet you.
And have you been there in Devon Island?
No,
already?
this is my first time, and not many civilians get to go. You sort of have to have a reason. So I feel really honored that I was asked to join. I think like 11 years ago, they had the Discovery Channel come and do a documentary. So if you actually Google it, there is some imagery and some articles about it, and really old footage from the Discovery Channel. But no, I've never gone. And it's a private island, so you can't, it's not private, but it's not open to public. It's a research island. So you can't just go there. Like, they're chartering a plane for us to go. So no, I've never had an opportunity.
So you're going on the next mission?
So we're leaving on the 16th of July.
In the know from the previous expeditions, do you know if, like, when they do these experiments going for expeditions, and when somebody supposedly dies as an astronaut, do you respawn your astronauts, or you just wait for all the astronauts to die and then say this was a great mission?
It's really sad. Well, that's actually, on Devon Island, of course you come for rescue. On Mars, since we know that it's only sort of a one-way ticket at this point with the technology we can conceive of, you're sort of just going to have to let them die or think really fast and create a rocket that will fly to Mars and back. So, yeah, in exercise, I think, as Dr. Lee was mentioning, you can notice that, all right, this is what happened and somebody is dying. We know to prevent this from happening, we need to do A, B, and C. But if that happens, if you encounter that on Mars, you're sort of screwed. Yeah, I mean, and you've seen the Martian, right? So Dr. Lee is close friends with Andy Weir, who wrote The Martian, the book that the movie was based on, and it's so interesting. Like, they talk about it. It's sort of to see those two interact. Like, one person takes this route of writing a book about it, and they make a movie, and the other person studies it to the core and sort of knows the facts, and it's really, really interesting. Yeah.
Okay, so I would like to ask a question here.
Okay. Sorry, the light is just so blinding.
Sure.
I see you now.
My name is Tomáš, and I'm all about space and planetary exploration, but there is also a side of it of like astrobiology that so far I guess we still don't know about any forms of life on Mars, but there is still a possibility that there is some form of life, like bacteria or other simple organisms. And my concern is that if we, like humans, set foot on Mars, we may contaminate it with our germs and stuff. So, what is your opinion about this matter?
So glad you asked me. So I'm not sure too much if you're following the news, but it was a big celebration for us about a week ago. There was an article, a huge release, that NASA actually found organic bacteria on Mars, proving that. Correct me, please correct me.
There's no life on Mars. Still, we have no idea if there is or if there is not. There's organic matter, but it doesn't mean life.
Good, fair correction. Yeah, thank you. In my simple understanding, I got so excited, and our entire team got so excited. We're like, oh, organic matter, yeah, means life. I think everybody who's interested in travel, space travel, hopes somewhere inside that there is life. And we've had these conversations, Dr. Lee and I, for so many times. And myself, from like the lover of sci-fi and very amateur planetary scientist, and him coming from the perspective of what he's finding in his geological experiments, as well as what he sees, the data that the rovers are sending back. Yeah, of course there's going to be influence, but it's also so far out. Yeah, we could come and completely destroy it, but it's, and first we're going to be very contained there. But yeah, ultimately, wherever we come, we're going to destroy, like we're destroying this planet. Yeah. I'm going to be a real optimist here. There's going to be influence, but it's going to be interesting too. I wish we could look forward and, I don't know, 300 years from now, 3 million years from now, and see what's going to happen. But yeah, in my opinion, yes, we're going to have influence when we make it to Mars.
Just one question, and pass the mic there. So, hi, Katja, it's Marta from Women.
Hi, Marta. Lovely to have you back.
Thank you. I'm very happy to bring all this Mars enthusiasts.
I love it. Thank you.
So my question is a bit, even like all the story is very exciting, and I'm really happy to listen to learn more about it. But now I'm a bit worried regarding these 5 causes of death on Mars. So my question would be, why we want to go to Mars if we're gonna die in the matter of seconds, minutes, or weeks? Like, what is your motivation to be interested in this exploration or information that you have from Dr. Lee?
Yeah, why not?
And would you go personally if you had the option to go?
Yeah, I'll start with that. I wouldn't be the first one.
That was my question. So.
Good question. No. I would wait until we do the 2-way ticket. And honestly, if I am honored and asked to do, I also feel like the people they're going to send are people that are jacks of all trades. Just imagine you go there, you have to be able to build things, because you can't bring everything with you. You'll bring some tools and some machinery, or you build the machinery to establish a base camp there. So I don't know if I qualify, to be honest, but yeah, I'd love to, not on the first trip. To your question, so first you have the suit to protect you. Number 2, the base camp, I envision it's going to be that dome that will protect you. And if I'm completely honest, the people who are thinking about life on Mars are really thinking we're completely screwed here, so we need an escape. And I think there's sort of people who can afford it. I don't consider myself that, so it's sort of, if this planet is going down, I'm going down with it kind of attitude. I just can't afford a ticket to this dome life that's going to be new and interesting and restricted. I love the freedom. I love the fact that I can travel, I can meet people from all over. As interesting as that experiment sounds, but then we all watch movies, like, you know what happens. They build these towns and they reproduce and they have this ideal life. I don't foresee it happening in our lifetime or even in the next, but who knows what's going to be in 200 to 300 years.
So did you have to go through any psychological test to be a part of this mission?
No, we are scheduling some time, because so it's a team of 5 now that we're going. I would have to bring the production team with me. And we have, so the crew that makes the movie, there are 3. And then we have somebody who will run the software updates for some of the devices. We need an engineer to bring with us. We'll have Wi-Fi, actually. Yeah, no bathrooms, but Wi-Fi. What a luxury. So, no psychological, no physical training.
Are you preparing yourself anyhow?
Hence my question. So I kept asking for it. I mean, I'm going for it. I'll be there for 10 days. It takes a while to get there. Like, it's 2 days of travel to get there. I'm just buying a lot of warm clothes. I get cold easily, so I'm getting everything Gore-Tex. to keep myself warm. They said that you can't leave base camp without somebody coming with you with a gun. So there's always a chance that you might run into a bear or a wolf. So that's kind of scary. And I go to the bathroom a lot. So I'm going to be.
Are there luggage limitations?
Yeah. So 2 bags, 50 pounds. So you have to think. And one of the bags, ideally, you carry the supplies. So, and they're bringing all the food that we're going to have. Again, there's no hotel, no restaurant, so you bring everything with you. So they said 1 bag, 50 pounds, that's all you, which is like 23 kilograms, that's all you get, and then you carry the bag for somebody else, which is the food, the supplies. Yeah, that's all I get. And we do have a scheduled 1-hour session for safety training, for technical training, and sort of to get an overview of what's going to be needed for us, what sort of procedures we need to follow. There are some things we'll have to look from the legal perspective from Google, maybe sign some documents, but they're in the NASA Ames Research Center, they're sort of quite comfortable with us. They haven't asked, how is your physical fitness, how is your psychological fitness, but I don't know what kind of assumptions they're making, but I hope we do fine. Yeah, and for us at Google, it was more of a, how can we stop more people from coming? Because base camp is limited to how many people it holds, and you can only carry so many people on the charter plane. I think 7 is the maximum, on the way back. So my crew is coming later, I'm coming a little earlier. It's expensive to have a production team for so long, so we only have them for 4 days while I'm there for 10 days. And on the way back, we're all flying together, and it's 7 people on a small charter plane, and it's maximum. So when we just had this conversation a week ago, and I said, so it's 7 altogether, they all got quiet in the room, like the NASA folks, and it's like, this is the maximum. How small is that plane? And I've never flown on anything but commercial, so I am a little scared. I'll probably watch my diet for the next couple of weeks.
I was listening to a Brazilian podcast when they were interviewing the Brazilian astronaut Marcos Pontes, and he said that he would be glad to go to a mission to Mars or somewhere else, but because also he's already aged somehow, like I think he's about 50 years old, and he wouldn't give the place for someone very young, like 30 years old, because this person still have like a whole life in front of them. And how old is the people involved in the experiments?
They're all scientists who've been studying this for all of their life, so they're Dr. Lee's age. And I am actually with you, I'm reading so much in current media that the scientific community, the planetary scientists, are pushing very hard the opinion that the people who do go to Mars should be people in that age category because they have the experience that you need, they've been practicing it, they've acquired the skills to build whatever. Because once they land on Mars, they're going to need to extract water. And you need to build, depending on, I mean, we know theoretically the 5 ways to extract water on Mars, but you have to build that machine. And they're practicing. A lot of MIT propose, you can read about it, there's so many scientists and organizations and institutions that now proposed ways to extract water on Mars, but you're going to need to build it. They're not bringing a lot with you. I went to the Cosmos exhibition today. Jan, thank you so much. That was fantastic. And you kind of see the size of it. Have you gone? They have the equivalent of Mir, and you walk in and it's tiny. So it sort of becomes really real of what all fits in and how you live when you're on a rocket, on a ship, in a capsule. And you can't possibly, you need food and you need to fit in people. So you can bring very little with you. You're going to need to build it. And the argument in the media now, and I sort of have a feeling that those scientists are pushing that argument because they devoted their life to studying Mars, is that they are of age to be sent to Mars. I haven't heard the argument we shouldn't waste a young life. I've heard more of or I'm reading more about we have the experience to sort of do the right thing.
Like to take advantage of the experience, the seniority.
Yeah. Good question, thank you.
What's your favorite space movie?
Oh, that's so unfair. Are you expecting me to say Star Wars? Because I'm not gonna lie. I'm just not gonna lie. That's unfair, and I'm on camera, and now so many people are gonna hate me. That's no. Can I just not answer?
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay. Thank you.
For not sharing mine, okay.
That's fine.
If someone
Is the other side? Do you feel excluded, guys? No, but I think.
Okay, but I just forgot my question. Oh.
You're having
Yeah,
way too much fun.
sure. Are there any new technologies that you or other scientists on the Devon Island are testing, or is there just?
So, not sure about Devon Island. I don't think what they're doing is really they're preparing how life will be set up on Mars. From what I'm seeing and what's in our scope, I recommend check out the documentary. If they are testing anything, we're going to film it. But I'm really excited about the InSight that's about to launch. That went out the 5th of May, and they're about to launch on the 26th of November. They land on the 26th of November on Mars. And they're going to dig deeper than we've ever dug on Mars. And I'm not sure why the technology is so different that this particular rover is able to dig deeper, but I'm following that. And I'm dying to find out what they find. Yeah. In terms of technology, it's kind of easy to speculate now with Elon Musk preparing he promised that he's going to send a rocket there next year and that he's going to take people there in 2025. So I see, and he sort of has the resources and the passion to create anything. So I wouldn't pass it by him if he comes up with something absolutely amazing to either test or, I don't know, a new astronaut suit. But NASA community, so Dr. Lee is really active in all of the conferences they have. Like if you look up his portfolio, it's phenomenal, and they invite him to talk and express his opinion. So he would absolutely know better in terms of what technology, but from talking to him anecdotally, they're not doing enough. And it's hard in America too, with the current administration, there's very little interest. Yeah, so it's hard, even if you create something, it's hard to launch it and pass any governmental issues or get any approvals, because you don't want to launch it in private, you ultimately want the government to use it or work with the government on it, because a lot of knowledge is within the government under NASA.
Yeah, sure, thank you.
Of course.
Hey, I'm Jacob. I have a question if there is any other project or experiment from Google included in that mission, or from any other, like not publicly funded organization.
On Devon Island?
Yes, on Devon Island.
So there are some things like in the kitchen from Google that I can't talk about right now. I asked, I knew I was coming to talk about this project, and I didn't get an okay from the teams to make it public. On this trip, and it's only a once a year opportunity, there aren't any other organizations, public or private, joining or doing any experiments or projects or building technology. No. I mean, and when you think about it, so Devon Island is the polar desert and it is very comparable to Mars, but projects like this with slightly different focus are happening. Like in Hawaii, there is a group of people who are saying that where they compares to Mars, and they do a lot of experiments. I haven't dug deeper into what they do, but just recently surfaced in my search. Like, I follow Google News, and they now know I'm very interested in Mars, so all I get are Mars news.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Jacob. Any more questions?
Right, unfortunately, Dr. Lee had to go. He had a different meeting. And if there are no more questions, I would like to thank a lot, Katja. So please, big applause for Katja.
None of this would be happening if you guys weren't interested. I really appreciate it, and I want to say thank you so much to kiwi.com, your interest in my project, the invitation to the conferences, organizing all of it. I'm truly touched. Thank you. And honestly, I'm not even like a gram qualified to stand in the planetarium and talk about Mars, but I'm so passionate about this, and I'm so glad that I can bring so many cool people together to work on this, and be on the lookout for the launch. So end of October, November, we're launching the documentary and the street view. Check it out. You'll see Dr. Lee. We're going to interview him for an hour. You'll see bits and pieces of Devon Island, and you'll feel like you've almost gone there since we met in person. Thank you.